Simcha Birchosecha Sela Adonai Sevasimanu Miskav Lanu Elohei Yaakov Selam Adonai Sevaos Wait, what did I do? Adonai Sevaos Imanu Miskav Lanu Elohei Yaakov Selah Adonai Sevaos Ashrei. No, this is not the way I'm used to doing it. I'll just let it go. Is this really different? Adonai Sevaos Ashrei Adam Botei Agbach Adonai Hoshia HaMelech Yanenu B'Yom Koreinu. A good vok, Shavua Tov. How's everybody doing? Let me get this screen in front of me. Here we go. Great to be learning with you. Saturday night. It's already Sunday on the calendar. Important point that we're actually going to be talking about today. So it's Yom Rishon. A good vok, Shavuot Tov. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Belle is sleepily in Texas. Yehudit in Budapest. Servus, Yehudit. Melissa in Great Neck. Belle says, thanks, Alan, for your dedication. Thank you, and you're very welcome. Lucy in Minnesota. Sharon in New Jersey, burning that midnight oil. Sam in Norway. Welcome, Sam. Karen in Northern California. Marla in Dallas. Yitzhak in Minnesota. Marjorie in Georgia. Welcome, everybody. Great job. If you're learning late at night, you're in good company. It's a beautiful time to learn. It's a peaceful, beautiful time. King David was known for rising in the middle of the night and learning Torah. So good company we're in. All right, our daf today is Yud Ches Chai 18, page 18, although we start near the bottom of page 17b here in Tractate Gittin, the 19th volume of the Talmud. We are in chapter 2, continuing our discussion of Mishna number 2. And we've been talking about some of the elements of a valid get, a valid bill of divorce, and this question of, does it have to have the date on it? And that was a requirement of the sages. But even though it was required, what if it wasn't there? Abaye said to Rav Yosef, it was taught in a Mishnah on page 86 of this tractate, 3 bills of divorce are invalid, not valid. But if a woman married after she received one of these bills of divorce, then the offspring is of unflawed lineage, meaning that the husband and wife are divorced after the fact. They should not have used this bill of divorce, because there's a problem with it. But if she relied on this get that had some kind of a little flaw in it, that flaw is not big enough to render the divorce not a divorce, thank God, because she remarried. And that second marriage is a valid marriage, and the children from that second marriage are not mamzerim, right? That's important. In other words, they are free to marry other Jews. Whereas if the get was truly flawed, then the second marriage is not a marriage because she's still married to the first husband. And if she has kids with this other man who she thought she was married to, the second husband, that would actually be adultery, and the children of that union would be mamzers and therefore would not be allowed to marry other Jews. So thank God this flaw in the get is not going to be a fatal flaw. So there are 3 gets that have this quality. It's bad, it's a flaw, but it won't render the get not a get. One of the 3 bills of divorce listed in this category is a bill of divorce that does not have a date on it. So Abaye asks, being that the divorce does take effect, what did the sages accomplish with their ordinance requiring that the date appear on the bill of divorce? Either way, the bill of divorce is valid after the fact without a date. And the Gemara answers, it is effective in that she may not marry ab initio. Like lechatahila is the word in Hebrew for that. We see it all the time. Right, and it's this idea that, okay, in the first place, it shouldn't have been done that way, but after the fact, we're not going to go so far as to render it ineffective. So what was accomplished if she relied on a bill of divorce that didn't have a date on it, and then it doesn't matter because her second marriage is still a valid marriage? So what was accomplished by requiring that the date be on it? Answer, if she has a get without a date on it, and she goes to her rabbi, okay, rabbi, here's my get from my first marriage. Please, perform the ceremony for my new husband and for my fiance and me to become my second husband. That rabbi will look at it and say, sorry, this get is no good. Go back and get a valid get from the first husband. So that's what it accomplishes. If that rabbi didn't check, or if that second husband didn't check and they got married anyway, okay, the marriage is a valid marriage. But if they do check, they're going to need to make sure that she has a valid get and do it correctly. Abaye continued to ask of his teacher, Rav Yosef, if the husband cut out its date after the dated bill of divorce was written, and he gave it to her. Why would he cut out the date? Remember that we have this issue that, in the traditional Jewish law, so if a woman brings fields, like agricultural fields, into a marriage, so they're her fields. And if they divorce, she's going to take her fields and, out of the marriage. She brought them into the marriage. She's going to take them out of the marriage. They don't become her husband's. They don't become community property that they split when they split up. They were her fields to begin with. They're going to remain her fields when she leaves. But while they're married, the husband has the right to the usufruct property, meaning the produce of those fields, right? So let's say she brings in a big, 100-acre or 1,000-acre cornfield. So then while they're married, the husband has the right to take the monetary value when they sell that corn each year, and deposit it into the account. I mean, he also has an obligation to sustain her. It's their property, but he has a right to that property. Now, once they're divorced, he no longer has the right to the produce from that field. Now, that produce sort of comes in all at once. So you could imagine that, a husband who's not a nice guy, who's going to divorce his wife, and he knows that after the date of the divorce, he loses the right to the corn on that field. So he might wait until after the harvest season, after all that money comes in, on a couple days of the year, to do the divorce. But maybe the wires got crossed. He had the get written. The scribe made a mistake. It was dated before the harvest. So then they were divorced at that moment. And so he didn't realize that this aspect of the law. So he thought he was going to get, the value of all that corn. And then he didn't. So he cuts the date off of the get so that he could keep that value. In other words, he's committing fraud. He's a shyster, right? So what about this guy? What is the law? Is it still a valid get, right? Can she rely on that get with the date cut off to go and get married again? And may it even be used ab initio, right? Meaning, like, if she has this get with the date cut off, and that's what she has, can she go and get married? Or are they going to tell her, go get another get that has the date on it? And Rav Yosef answered Abaye, we are not concerned about a deceiver. The ordinance requiring that the bill of divorce be dated does not apply in this case, as it was dated when it was written. We're not going to make her go back and get another get. Abaye continued and asked his teacher, Rav Yosef, if the date written in the bill of divorce made reference only to the 7-year Shemitah cycle, or only to the year, or only to the month, or only to the week, but the precise date was not recorded on it, then what is the law? May such a bill of divorce be used lechatila, ab initio? And he said to him, it is valid to be used lechatila. She can use this get that has an imprecise date. It only says the month, or it only says the year, or it only says the particular 7-year cycle. When they, were much more attuned to 7-year cycles in an agricultural society. That's such an imprecise date. You think that she can rely on that? And the answer is yes. So Abaye is going to press Rav Yosef about this. Well, so if so, what did the sages accomplish with their ordinance requiring the dating of a bill of divorce? Regardless of the reason for recording the date, such a vague dating will not ameliorate the problem. Right? If you're worried about that the husband has the right to the crop, because the bill of divorce was written a few days too early, now you have a bill of divorce that we can only pin down in time within a 7-year period. And Rav Yosef answered, yes, we can rely on it, and it helps for the 7-year period before and the 7-year period after it. If witnesses testify that the woman committed adultery before this 7-year period, then she is liable. And if the husband sells produce after this 7-year period, then the woman can recover it. And the reason for this is because if you do not say so, i.e. that a limited benefit is enough to justify the ordinance, then on that day itself, do we know if it was written in the morning or in the evening? Right? When we say that the get has to have a date on it, what we mean is it has to have a day, a month, a year. But we don't specify the hour. So the problems that you're talking about with the vagueness, we have the same problems. It could come up that he harvested the crop in the morning and it was dated and it was written in the afternoon. But we're not going to have enough information about that on the get itself. So there's just a limit to how much specificity we can require. How much metadata we can require, as it were. So Rav Yosef, that's what Rav Yosef's answer was. So rather, the date is effective for the day before and the day after it. And here also, with regard to a get that is only dated with a particular 7-year Shemitah period, it's effective vis-a-vis the earlier Shemitah period that came before or the later Shemitah period that came after. Now, Ravina said to Rava, if he writes the bill of divorce and puts it in his pocket without giving it to her, as he thought that if she appeases him, he will be appeased, what is the law when he then does give it to her? Since the date on the document is incorrect, did the sages institute an ordinance that such a bill of divorce should not be used? Right? So he wrote the bill of divorce for her, and then he vacillated. Should I give it to her? Should I not? She's not officially, they don't become divorced until he hands it to her. It was dated on a particular day. Maybe he holds on to it for a day, a week, a month, and then he gives it to her. Now, she becomes divorced on the day it was given to her. She becomes fully divorced. Now, that's not the same date at all as when it was written, so we have a problem. So what do the sages do with that? And Rava said to him, listen, a person does not hasten a calamity on himself and will not ordinarily prepare a bill of divorce in advance. Rather, he will wait until he is ready to divorce his wife. So since your scenario is pretty unlikely, the sages did not see a need to institute an ordinance pertaining to that situation. Ravina said to Rav Ashi, when there are bills of divorce that come from a country overseas, which are written, for example, in the month of Nisan, and they do not reach the woman until the month of Tishrei, what did the sages accomplish with their ordinance to date the bill of divorce? That could be 6 months. So if you're saying that we need a date because it's specific, okay, well, the bill of divorce is dated 6 months before it was actually delivered. So what did we accomplish by having the date on it? Don't we really just care about when she receives it? So Rav Ashi said to Ravina, concerning these bills of divorce from overseas, it is public knowledge that they do not take effect from the date on which they were written. Therefore, if there is a conflict over produce the husband has sold, the woman must bring witnesses to testify as to when she received her bill of divorce. Now, the sages decreed that it is prohibited for a woman to remarry within 3 months of her divorce, or the sages decreed that it is prohibited for a woman to remarry within 3 months of her divorce or within 3 months of her becoming a widow, in order to prevent the situation of doubt concerning the paternity of the child, right? Since she was not in anyone's bed for 3 months between the previous husband and the new husband, we're going to know, if she becomes pregnant, whether that's a 9-month baby or not. In other words, we don't assume that babies can be born after 6 months. So if she has a baby 6 months after she marries the second husband, it must be that the father is the original husband, the first husband. So that's why they made this decree of having to wait for 3 months. Now, why is this being brought here? So the question is going to be, this 3-month waiting period, is it from the date on which the get is written, and that date is on the get, or is it the date on which she receives the get? And as we've seen, in the case of a get coming from overseas, or in the case of a husband who vacillates and changes his mind, there might be a delay between when it was written and when it was delivered to her. So from when does one begin counting the 3 months with regard to a bill of divorce? And Rav says from the time of the giving of the bill of divorce. And Shmuel says from the time of the writing of the bill of divorce. Now Rav and Shmuel are major league Amoraim, so we have a big dispute between two luminaries in the Torah world as to how long she has to wait 3 months before getting married again. Is it from the writing of the get or from the receiving of the get, the time she received the get? Now, Rav Nassan bar Hoshaya objects to this. According to the statement of Shmuel, that she has to wait 3 months from the writing of the bill of divorce. So Rav Nassan bar Hoshaya says, if we follow Shmuel, imagine a situation where there's two women who live in the same courtyard. So they're aware of each other's business, right? And they get divorced on the same day, meaning that they receive their gets from their respective husbands on the same day. But one of them, her get was written on the same day that she received it. And the other one, her get was written, a month earlier. So what will happen is these two women have different waiting periods. Everyone saw that they received their get on the same day. But one is going to have to wait 3 months from that same day, and the other one only has to wait 2 months because her get was written a month earlier than she received it. So if we follow Shmuel, that the waiting period counts from the day the get was written, we're going to have this odd situation where, appearance of impropriety or appearance of inconsistency of policy. I mean, everyone's going to know they got their get on the same day, but they have different waiting periods. So that doesn't seem okay, at least according to Rav Nassan bar Hoshaya. Abaye said to him, this is not difficult. With regard to this woman, the date of her bill of divorce proves concerning her that she may not remarry yet. And with regard to that woman, the date on her bill of divorce proves concerning her that she may remarry. So what? They're going to have different situations. They have different gets. They were dated on different days. In fact, it's easier to point to a written document and say, this is why she's waiting. Both of them are waiting 3 months, but their gets were dated on different days. What's the problem with that? Now, the Gemara comments, there's a Baraisa that agrees with the opinion of Rav, and there's a Baraisa that agrees with the opinion of Shmuel. So the Baraisa that holds like Rav says... the one that holds like Rav, right, who says that we count 3 months from the date that she receives the get. So there's a Baraisa that agrees with that. In the case of one who sends a bill of divorce to his wife, and the agent who's going to deliver the get tarries on the way for 3 months. Once the bill of divorce reaches her hand, she must wait 3 months before remarrying, right? Because we're counting from when she received the get. She has to wait 3 months, even though the get was already 3 months old when she received it because the agent got lost or took a long time to bring it. And one need not be concerned that it is an outdated bill of divorce, i.e. that the husband and wife were secluded after it was written, rendering the bill of divorce invalid because he was not secluded with her during the time that the bill of divorce was being delivered. So note what they said in passing. If a husband writes a bill of divorce and before it's delivered to his wife, they have marital relations, end of that get. If he still wants to divorce her, he's going to have to write a new get. Quite interesting. But to continue this discussion, right, the Baraisas that was a Baraisa that supports Rav, that it seems like we count the 3 months before she can remarry from the time she receives the get. And then there was another Baraisa that supports the view of Shmuel, that we count 3 months from the time the get was written. In the case of one who is about to travel, and he deposits a bill of divorce for his wife with a trustee, and says to him, give it to her only after 3 months. Once the trustee gives it to her, she is permitted to marry immediately and is not required to wait an additional 3 months. And one need not be concerned that it is an outdated bill of divorce, as he was not secluded with her in the interim. We know that because he went away. So there it seems like where it was not an agent of delivery who took his time, but rather a trustee who was instructed to deliver it 3 months later. When she gets it, she can rely on the date that it was written 3 months earlier, so she can remarry immediately. Now, it is told that Rav Kahana and Rav Papi and Rav Ashi would, in practice, count 3 months from the time of the writing. But Rav Papa and Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, would, in practice, count these 3 months from the time of the giving. And the law is, the halacha is, that the counting begins from the time of the writing. From the time of the writing. Which is nice because clear evidence, here's the date on the get, and that's when she counts from that time until she can remarry again. Now, the Gemara discusses another dispute between Rav and Shmuel with regard to documents. We're going on a little digression here. Now that we've talked about Rav and Shmuel have a dispute with regard to a get and when and how and when it is dated, we're going to see another dispute between Rav and Shmuel, not pertaining to a get, but to a ketubah, or some would pronounce it ketubah, right? To a wedding contract, right? So here we go. According to the terms of a marriage contract, a widow is entitled to payment of its value upon the death of her husband. By Torah law, all outstanding debts are canceled at the close of the sabbatical year, the Shemitah year. So a woman need not take her marriage settlement as soon as her husband dies. The issue at hand is at what point the marriage contract generates a concrete debt that will be canceled by the sabbatical year. It was stated, from when is the debt established by a marriage contract canceled in the sabbatical year, right? So she, when they get divorced, so he owes her the money that he agreed to pay in the ketubah when they got married if they got divorced. If she doesn't take possession of that payment as soon as they get divorced, then a debt is established. Debts are canceled in the sabbatical year. So when did the ketubah payment become a concrete debt? Is it when the get was written, or is it at some later time? Rav says the marriage contract becomes like a debt and will be canceled in the sabbatical year from the time when the woman collects partial payment and establishes the rest as a debt in court. So very interesting. It's not that the guy can, divorce his wife during a Shemitah year and then get out of paying the ketubah payment. Not at all. That is a fixed payment that must be paid. It is not considered a debt. However, if she agrees to some kind of a payment plan and takes a partial payment, the rest of the payments that are owed to her do become like a debt and do qualify to be canceled by Shemitah. Now, what's interesting about that is they're not going to mention it here, but note that over time, it created a problem, this idea of cancellation of debts in a Shemitah year, where people wouldn't lend money, to poor people because the Shemitah year was looming, and then they felt they weren't going to get paid back when all debts get canceled. And so in fact, this benefit in the Torah started to become a problem for poor people rather than a blessing. So that's when the sages stepped in and created a legal device called a prosbul, where the debtor would technically owe the money to the rabbinic court, which would then pass it to the creditor, and in that way, the debt would not be canceled by the Shemitah year. So it might well be that, obviously the woman had a good advisor. If the husband wasn't able to pay the whole ketubah payment at the time of the divorce, and she agreed to a payment plan, and that might even be better for her, so she doesn't get it all at once because she doesn't want to get it all at once, what they might do is institute that a prosbul would accompany that debt so that it wouldn't be canceled by the Shemitah year. But in the absence of the prosbul, then when does that ketubah payment become a debt that's different than just the ketubah obligation? And so, right, here's the first opinion. Right, Rav says it only becomes a hard debt when she takes a partial payment and establishes the rest as a debt. Shmuel says this occurs when she either collects partial payment, although she did not establish it as a debt, or she established the entire value of the marriage contract as a debt in court, although she did not collect partial payment. Now, with regard to this dispute, it is taught, there's a baraisa that supports Rav, and there's a baraisa that supports Shmuel. The baraisa that supports Rav says, from when is the debt established by a marriage contract canceled? From when she accepts partial payment and establishes the rest of the debt in court. However, if she accepted a partial payment but did not establish the debt, or established the debt but did not accept partial payment, then it is not canceled by the Shemitah year until she accepts partial payment and establishes the debt. And it is taught in another baraisa, in accordance with the opinion of Shmuel, if the fine and damages paid by one who commits rape, or the fine paid by one who falsely claims that his wife was not a virgin at the time of their wedding, or the fine paid by the seducer, or the debt established by a woman's marriage contract that was established as a loan, then the sabbatical year cancels it. And if one did not establish these payments as loans, then the sabbatical year does not cancel them. From when is it considered that these payments have been established as a loan? From the time of standing trial, because the abstract obligation to pay becomes a debt once the court ruled that the rapist or the seducer or the divorcee needs to pay. Now, the Gemara discusses other aspects of the marriage contract, still talking about the ketubah. Shmuel said a ketubah is considered to be like a court enactment. Just as court enactments may be written during the day and then signed at night, and the fact that the writing and the signing were not performed on the same day does not present a problem, so too a ketubah may be written during the day and then signed at night. As we saw, this is not the case with a get, with a a bill of divorce. A bill of divorce has to be written and signed on the same day. And that's why if it was written in the morning and signed at night, it's not written and signed on the same day because it's a new day when nightfall comes in the Jewish calendar. But for a ketubah, a marriage contract, that doesn't present a problem. And the fact that the writing and signing of the ketubah were not performed on the same day does not present a problem. So too, a marriage contract, the ketubah, may be written during the day and then signed at night. And it is told, Rabbi Chiya bar Rav's marriage contract, his ketubah, was written during the day and then signed at night. And Rav was there, and he didn't say anything to the people who wrote and signed it. And this indicates that Rav agrees with the ruling of Shmuel. And the Gemara asks, shall we say he holds in accordance with the opinion of Shmuel? The Gemara rejects this. This cannot be proven from here because the scribe and witnesses were continually engaged in the matter of writing the marriage contract from when it was written in the day until they signed it at night. As it is taught in a baraisa that Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok said, the sages taught that a document written during the day and signed at night is invalid only when the scribe and the witnesses were not continuously engaged in that matter. But if they were continuously engaged in that matter until nightfall, then it is valid. That could easily happen at a wedding. And the Mishna taught that Rabbi Shimon, now we're back to the get, deems valid a get written during the day and signed at night. But we thought it was not valid. But Rabbi Shimon says valid. He's in the minority. Rava said, what is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Shimon? He holds that once the husband has decided to divorce his wife, he no longer has the rights to the produce from his wife's property, and it is clear that he has decided to divorce her when he writes the bill of divorce. Consequently, the woman obtains the rights to the produce from the moment the bill of divorce was written, regardless of when it was signed. Reish Lakish says, Rabbi Shimon deems such a bill of divorce valid only if it is signed immediately, when the witnesses signed the bill of divorce during the night after it was written. However, if the delay in signing was from now, i.e. when the bill of divorce was written, until 10 days have elapsed, i.e. when there is an extended delay, then even Rabbi Shimon would deem it not valid. Now we're on 18b. Why not? Because we're concerned that perhaps he appeased his wife and engaged in sexual intercourse with her, thereby invalidating the get. And Rabbi Yochanan said, even if the delay in signing was for 10 days, Rabbi Shimon still would deem it valid. There is no concern that he appeased her, because if it is so that he appeased her, then the matter becomes public knowledge and everybody would hear about it. I'm not sure I agree with that, but okay, that's what they say. Now, it was stated that Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish disagreed with regard to the following case. If the husband says to 10 men, write a bill of divorce for my wife. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan says the husband means that all of them should sign the bill of divorce. 2 of them function as witnesses, and all the rest of them sign the bill of divorce only due to the stipulation that the husband had stated. He made the bill of divorce dependent upon all of them signing. But he did not mean that 10 men need to actually function as witnesses. And Reish Lakish says all of them function as witnesses. In other words, you could say, this is your bill of divorce if the Yankees beat the Dodgers tomorrow night. Right? You could make a condition like that. And so the husband could be saying, this is your bill of divorce if all these 10 men sign it. Now, that when you're having 10 men sign it, that's normally what you ask witnesses to do. So are we implying that this husband wants 10 witnesses to the bill of divorce and every one of them functions as a witness? Or is it just a stipulation, the equivalent of if the Yankees beat the Dodgers tomorrow night? Now, it was so where are we? So Rabbi Yochanan says what he meant was 2 of them are witnesses, the other 8 have to sign, but they don't function as witnesses. And Reish Lakish says, no, he said 10 men have to sign it, so all 10 of them are going to act as witnesses. Now the Gemara asks, what are the circumstances in which all of them have to sign? If we say that he did not say to them, all of you, but he simply said to 10 guys that were standing there, you should write a bill of divorce for my wife. Well, in that situation where he didn't specify all of you have to sign it, but we just said to 10 men who were gathered, write a bill of divorce, we learned in a Mishna on page 66 of this tractate, write a bill of divorce for my wife, then 1 would write and 2 would sign. And not all 10 of them are required to sign. Rather, the case of their dispute is when he actually did say, all of you sign. That's what this guy said. And that's what Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish are arguing about. He said, all of you write a bill of divorce for my wife. And in this instance, it was taught later on in the Mishnah that one person writes the bill of divorce and everyone else must sign it. So the Gemara asks, what is the difference between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish? What is the practical difference in real life? Whether we say that 10 are witnesses or 2 are witnesses and the other 8 have to sign just to fulfill that stipulation. The Gemara answers, there is a difference between them in a case where 2 of them signed on that day and the rest signed not on the day when it was written, but 10 days later. So according to the one who says that the other signatures are due to the stipulation, the bill of divorce is valid because 2 witnesses signed the bill of divorce on the same day that it was written, and the husband's stipulation was also fulfilled, albeit later. And according to the one who says that all these people signed due to the wish that they function as witnesses, then the get is not valid because not all of the witnesses signed the bill of divorce on the same day that it was written and when the husband signed it. So alternatively, there is another practical difference between them in a case where one of these 10 people is found to be a relative of the husband or the wife, or is otherwise found to be disqualified to serve as a witness. According to the one who says that the other signatures are due to the husband's stipulation, this bill of divorce is valid because a disqualified person doesn't have to be one of the witnesses. We've got 2 valid witnesses, so it's a good get. But according to the one who says that all these people have to sign as witnesses, then if one of them is disqualified as a witness, the get is rendered invalid. And the Gemara adds yet another point of dispute. According to Rabbi Yochanan, who holds that the other witnesses sign due to the stipulation, if a relative or other disqualified witness signed at the beginning before 2 valid witnesses had signed, then some say the bill of divorce is valid and some say that it is invalid. Some say that it is valid because the request for 10 signatures is only a stipulation. Since these 10 people are not meant to serve as witnesses and are meant only to fulfill the husband's stipulation, it makes no difference if they signed at the beginning or at the end. But others say that it is invalid because there is a concern that the courts will come to confuse it with typical documents, and they will rely on disqualified witnesses in those cases. It is told there was a certain person who said to 10 men, now this was a hypothetical, what if you tell 10 men to write a get? Now it actually happened, there was an incident. There was a certain person who said to 10 men, write a bill of divorce for my wife. He didn't say all of you. He just said to 10 men, write a bill of divorce. 2 of them signed that day, and the others signed after a delay of 10 days. So this man came before Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi to ask what the law is with regard to such a bill of divorce. And Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said to him, Rabbi Shimon, who permitted using a bill of divorce that was written during the day and signed at night, is worthy of being relied upon in exigent circumstances. Therefore, once such a bill of divorce has been written and given, the woman is divorced. And the Gemara challenges, and I'm almost done, so if you've got questions or comments, get them in now. But didn't Reish Lakish say Rabbi Shimon deemed such a bill of divorce valid only if it was signed immediately? But if there was a 10-day delay, then no. The Gemara answers with regard to that question, whether the others must sign immediately. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, who holds that they may sign even after a delay because they're just fulfilling the stipulation, they're not witnesses. And the Gemara challenges, but didn't Rabbi Yochanan say 2 of them function as witnesses and all the rest of them signed the bill of divorce only due to the stipulation? It is clear that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi does not hold in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, as Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is concerned about the other witnesses and deems the bill of divorce valid only due to exigent circumstances. And the Gemara answers with regard to this, i.e. why the additional people must sign, he holds in accordance with the opinion of Reish Lakish that all of them function as witnesses. And that's how Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi disposed of that case when it actually came up. Tomorrow at noon Pacific, we'll continue with Mishna number 3 here in chapter 2. Again, tomorrow's class, Sundays at noon Pacific, not the usual 6 p.m. Pacific for our Sunday class because we have a family obligation. Okay, let's check if there are any comments or questions here on Gittin 18. Okay, Nina's telling me no comments or questions. Okay, everybody, a good vok, Shavua Tov. Have a great week, and I look forward to learning with you tomorrow, Sunday, at noon Pacific. All the best.